Hello, I'm actually back filming a second video in the same day. I bet you didn't think I would do it. I didn't either. I changed my top, but then I was like, I'm going to tell them it's the same day anyway, so should I even bother? But here we are. Today we are doing my June wrap up. I had another good reading month in June. Again, not going to talk about every single book. Just going to talk about the books that I actually really enjoyed or really have thoughts about and skip the rest. But if you want to see my opinions on every book that I read ever, be my friend on Goodreads. I write proper reviews for every single book, and I also write proper reviews for every single movie I watch on Letterboxd. So be my friend in that too. I really don't have any followers on that at all yet, but I'm actually really enjoying it. It's basically Goodreads for movies. So yeah. Today though, we're talking about books, and if you enjoy this video, please leave a like and please subscribe for more videos. And again, as always, leave me any comments down below talking about any of these books, if you have read them too, or if you think they sound good, etc, etc. And let's get started talking about the books. The first book we're going to talk about today is The Switch by Beth O'Leary, and this was another book that took me totally by surprise. I had no expectations going into it. I honestly didn't really know what it was about, but it really, really impressed me. So the premise of The Switch is that we are following two characters. We are following Lena and her grandmother Elaine, and Lena has had like a lot of anxiety and stuff going on at work due to her sister dying, and it's just got too much, and her boss tells her to go and take like 3 months off, and it's paid, which I mean is the dream, but just to, like, sort her head out and stuff like that. And then Elaine is looking for love but lives in a little small village and is really struggling, so she goes to London and kind of moves in with Lena's roommates and takes over her life a little bit. And Lena goes to her grandmother's little village and gets involved in like the village politics and things like that, and hijinks ensue. There's a little bit of romance on both sides, and it's just a really, really fun. I was so surprised by how fun this book was. I thought it was just going to be like another kind of quirky romance book, but the romance actually takes a really back seat to just the overall story of taking care of yourself, realizing what's important in the world, like looking out for the people around you, um, stuff like that. And it was just such a nice book, and I loved both characters equally. It would change like chapter by chapter, to have like one with the grand, one with the Lena, so Elaine, Lena, Elaine, Lena. Lena is named after Elaine, obviously. And yeah, it just was such a nice, fun, easy story to read, and totally just surprised me with how much I enjoyed it. There is some serious parts as well, because it does talk about grief, obviously, with Lena. Her sister died recently, and her and her mother's relationship is very fractured because of that. But overall, it was just like a fun, nice story, and if you're looking for something quite easy to read this summer, I would definitely recommend The Switch. The next book I'm going to talk about is Dear Leader, the unauthorized biography of Kim Jong-il by Michael Malice, and this is written as if Kim Jong-il, the leader of North Korea in the past, he's dead now, wrote it himself, and Michael Malice compiled it using propaganda that he got from North Korea. So it's basically the North Korean version of history, and I absolutely adored this book purely because of how genius I thought it was. It is so clever how he manages to actually make you feel like Kim Jong-il himself was the one that wrote it. Like, I genuinely had to catch myself sometimes from believing that it was real. And also, I really had to keep my brain switched on the whole time that I was listening to it, because the way that they present history to you, a lot of it is really ridiculous, and you roll your eyes and it's quite funny at times, but other times it seems really true and realistic, and you have to remind yourself, like, right, okay, this is like North Korean like propaganda. So I would like take notes as I was listening, and then go online and read the Western version of history of like all these different events, because a lot of it is like America versus North Korea and stuff like that. So I found it really interesting to then use this as a jumping off point to research things into North Korea, because I obviously know a lot about North Korea, and I've read a book before by a North Korean author, but overall my area of history about North Korea is pretty, weak. So I just thought it was such a clever book, and it ends on such a haunting like note, where all the humor is like cut out. Like, a lot of the book is humorous, but then at this point it's like completely cut out, and it just basically tells you like the people in North Korea have no human rights. They have no idea of like the outside world and what we think of them, and it's just like so dark and haunting. And it basically says like, well, it compares things in North Korea to like concentration camps in World War II, and just talks about how like these things are happening today. These like horrible like human trials, human experimentation, all sorts of things are going on in North Korea, and we can't do anything to help them. And it was so like just haunting is like the main word I can use. Like I sat there, I was like, oh my god, like because a lot of the book is pretty humorous and it just ends on a super dark note. So yeah, I would definitely recommend listening to this. I thought it was really clever and really well constructed, and it's also like I said, a really good jumping off point for learning more about North Korea. I also listened to Convenience Store Woman, and this is set in Japan, and it follows a woman who has worked at a convenience store for like 20 years, and she is definitely neurodivergent. She has never married, never really had a boyfriend, I don't think at all. Um, is just very happy living out her life in this very strict routine, you know, waking up, going to a convenience store, having lunch there, working more, buying her dinner from the store, going home, eating it, having like the exact amount of hours of rest that she needs, then go back to the store and work again. Like her whole entire life is revolved around this convenience store, and she doesn't understand why everyone around her is judging her for still working there as, you know, a fully grown woman, and why they're judging her for not having a husband. And it's a really funny story at times, but it never feels like you're laughing at her. It always feels like you're laughing with her, which I really appreciated, because I think this is very similar to Eleanor Oliphant is Completely Fine, where that was also about a woman, and that's one of my favourite books, who, you know, is very strict in her routine and just goes to work, comes home, drinks, goes back to work, like blah blah blah. So I think that's why I loved it, and I just loved like the tone. And I listened to this on audiobook again. A lot of my books recently are audiobooks, and the narrator was so good, and she just filled you with so much joy and excitement when the woman was in the convenience store working. Just the tone of voice that she used, the way she'd speak to customers, it was really entertaining and also quite eye-opening as well, because the woman at some point has a really interesting conversation with a ex-employee about societal pressures. He is a man who cannot get married because he's just a bit of a jerk, to be honest. You know, he blames everyone else, but really he's the issue. But the two of them discuss like the societal pressures of living in Japan when you can't conform to the normal way of life, like the normal, like prescribed, like leave school, go to university, get married, blah 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 role that everyone is kind of expected to do, and how difficult it is to exist outside of that. So yeah, it was quite eye-opening at times, quite entertaining as well, and overall just like a really fun listen. So I also read another book by a Japanese author this month, and that was The Lonely Castle in the Mirror. And this is about a young girl who stops going to school because she's being bullied, and she's just hanging about her house, like refusing to go back. And one day her mirror on her wall lights up. She goes and touches it, and she falls through, and she ends up in this fantasy castle. And there's a bunch of other kids there who have all had the exact same experience, and they realize that they're all not going to school, and that's kind of why they're there. Then this wolf girl appears and tells them that if they search the castle and find a key, then one of them will have their wish granted, but they will all forget everything that happened in the castle and all forget each other. Or they can all just kind of hang around there for the school year and then go back to their normal real lives, and they will have their memories. So it's quite this interesting balance where they don't know what to do, but then they slowly become friends. At first, they're quite standoffish and stuff, as you'd expect. They're all not going to school for some reason, which you find out throughout the course of the story. But soon they all have this really like heartwarming, beautiful friendship that evolves, and the ending, the last, I would say 20% of this book maybe, was just amazing. Like absolutely loved it. It did take me a while to get through the start of the book, and I don't know why, because I was really enjoying it. It was no problem with the book. It just was taking me a while. I think it was just me not really in a reading mood. But I stuck with it, and I was so glad I did. I really enjoyed learning some contemporary Japanese issues, like about schooling and what's kind of expected from students and stuff over there, while also pairing it with this like fun fantasy story with this like castle in the mirror and this wolf girl and stuff like that. So it was like a really interesting book with this really cool balance of fantasy and contemporary, And overall, I just was so blown away. It really kept me guessing as well. There's quite an interesting like mystery aspect to it. But everything comes together so fun and so perfectly. So yeah, I would definitely recommend Lonely Castle in the Mirror. So the last book I'm going to talk about is actually a poetry book, and this is still on NetGalley right now if you're interested, and I would highly recommend you go and check it out. It's called When the Night Agrees to Speak to Me by Ananda Devi, and it's translated by Kazim Ali. And it is originally written in French but translated into English, but the author is not from France. She's from Mauritius, which is a country in East Africa, which I'm embarrassed to say I'd never actually heard of. But the poems are just really beautiful, and they are all about like life on the island for a little bit, not really, but more about just like dark, like deep human emotion. Some about love, a lot about like feminism and like the human body and things like that. That's a big aspect, and just a whole host of different poetic topics, which I just was so impressed by, especially because it's translated, and translated works can sometimes be quite choppy, and a bit awkward. So the fact that the translation was so beautiful means that the original prose must be just as beautiful. And there's actually a really interesting conversation between the translator and the original author at the end of the book. And the book also actually, sorry, it gives you the original poem in French and then the English translation like side by side. So I quite enjoyed like reading back and forth, even though my French isn't that good anymore at all. It was still fun to look back and forth and kind of compare the two. And if you're bilingual properly and you can read them both, I think that'd be a really entertaining and excellent time. But yeah, the author herself is multilingual, not just bilingual. She speaks like 4 languages, I'm sure. So they have a really interesting conversation on what that's like being fluent in so many languages and being a writer and writing in different languages, and just topics like that, which I really actually enjoyed. So yeah, this is on NetGalley now, and I would highly recommend you go and check it out. I'm sure it's a read now, actually, so you don't even have to like request it, you can just read it, which is always great. So yeah, definitely recommend going and checking this out. So again, thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and please subscribe. I'm not sure when this is going out, but if it is before my Yalk vlogs, make sure to check those out. I'm sure there'll be lots of other booktubers in that vlog, hopefully, unless everyone avoids me, which you never know. Cannot, no, I have friends, I promise. Yeah, so leave a like, subscribe for more videos, and definitely leave a comment down below talking about any of these books, any thoughts you had, or if you've read them before. I would love to hear down below. And again, thank you for watching. I will see you in my next video.